It's been a hot second since my last JoJo video, but the algo has been showing my old JoJo content some love, so I thought I'd circle back to an idea that I've wanted to get to for a while. Let's talk JoJo stand, style, and user coordination. Hola, my name is X, and I like to experiment with fashion, as well as talk about whatever the hell I want on social media whenever I feel like it. And in this video, the agenda is pretty straightforward. We're just going to go over my top favorite JoJo stands. We're going to take the top favorite approach because I looked it up really quick, and I think there's at least over 150 unique stands between parts 3 and 8 of the JoJo series. And I'm only going to review 54 of those because that's a lot to get into, and I'm not segmenting this out between gender and sex, so we're doing it all together, which gets into a little bit of criteria for how I selected these JoJo stands. I really wanted to focus on ones that had a true humanoid form. I really wanted to look at ones that could give us a little bit more of that even directional fashion fantasy and give us a little bit more imagination to work with. And then with that, I kind of focused on ones that I thought were the least ugly. There's some ugly stands, so I wanted to look at ones that at least gave a little bit more aesthetic than the rest. And then as far as the structure for this video, similar to the top JoJo character favorite videos, we're going to do JoJo part by JoJo part, and then within those, we're going to look at like my least favorite to most favorite stands, I guess. But honestly, I think that's a pretty organic flow because the stands do get pretty more interesting and elaborate with each subsequent part of the JoJo series. And before we hop right in, I did just want to note some general stand style notes. It's really interesting kind of just seeing how they play with color, how they play with different kind of silhouettes, and how there's various decorative elements on them just to give proper nuance to their forms, but also better coordinate them with their users. And then there's also just interesting inspiration behind the stands. I'm not going to do a deep dive. This isn't an iceberg, but I'll try to drop you a little bit of fun facts as to maybe what sort of Greek or Egyptian mythology or gods these are based off of, groups, pop culture references. There's plenty to kind of get into there, but that's a minor input for how I evaluated these and really what I'm looking at. Okay, now let's get into reviewing these stands, starting with the third part of the JoJo series, Stardust Crusaders. So first we have Cream. First of all, I loved Vanilla Ice's look and just some of those little designs like heart motifs. And so we definitely see some of those elements incorporated within Cream's design. And I like the kind of play between their names, Vanilla Ice and then Cream, even though Cream, I believe, is just a British band. I like the executioner's cowl around the stand's head. It kind of gives a similar upper body head, shoulder framing and silhouette as Vanilla Ice, and so I'll call that out quite a bit with regard to how that kind of coordinates with the original silhouette of the user. The color palette's simple and straightforward and nice, like the purple, black, and white look. Next we have Dark Blue Moon. I was a little hesitant to incorporate this one just because it's not giving as much style. It kind of looks like the aquatic Bionicle, Lego's Bionicles. Does anybody else know what that is? I feel like it just gives that kind of foldable, flexible, kind of like shape it how you want structure and architecture, for lack of a better way to put it. It's pretty powerful in the water, which I think is also a minor kind of contextual ability point that kind of gives a little more value in my eyes. And obviously it coordinates well with its user. Its user is like an assassin that's disguised as a captain at sea. So we're definitely getting more of that kind of water, aquatic, conceptual connection. Next up is Death 13. I hate the Mannish Boy character. That is such a weird character, but a unique kind of stand relationship, not as much direct coordination. I just love the design. It just seems so majestic, a fun twist on a Grim Reaper type character. The manga is much better because there's so many more gold elements, and the gold is just shining and so glorious against all of that dramatic purple fabric. I'm really just into the hardware elements, and even though it doesn't have a body, I feel like that's really complementary to a hollow kind of being, with the fabric really just giving it its kind of contrasting loose form. I love Atoms. I think it's one of my favorite stands, to be honest, mostly because there's all these heart motifs. Hearts everywhere. I feel like Araki did a really good job with incorporating heart motifs across a number of stands. Like either you do a sprinkle or you go all the way, and this one goes all the way. I believe I read that it's directly based off of the Egyptian god Adam. So I feel like that's kind of an interesting representation and embodiment of that. I could go without a little bit of that kind of weird goggly eye that it has, and a lot of stands have weird eyes in general. But just the color is really cute and nice. Obviously coordinates with Tellence's look really well, which I loved his design. So Silver Chariot is one that got a bit more credit after I took another look. Initially, when I first saw it in the anime, I think it's really just the eyes. They just look kind of cartoonish and a little caricature-ish compared to what is a really elaborate and interesting hardware, full silver steel body experience that we're getting with so much cool silver detail. And I love the way it moves, but it's just the eyes that are just kind of like, But it does coordinate really well with Jean-Pierre. Even though his design isn't my favorite and I don't really like his outfit, he has a bit more of that kind of washed out pale palette, particularly in the pants and his hair, that I think go well with like a cooler, more washed out silver undertone. I'm just gonna skip forward, and I guess a spoiler alert if you haven't made it this far, which I don't really know why you would watch this if you haven't. I love Chariot Requiem, like after the stand gets corrupted, like in part 5. Just, it's such an interesting silhouette. It's a bit kind of classic, and I feel like it's giving a little bit of a medieval vibe. But overall, I think just the dark and kind of shadowy, blobby, like abyss kind of texture, or I guess material or composition is really interesting. Obviously, it looks like it's kind of wearing a bit of an outfit, so that's kind of like stylish, particularly the hat. So Magician's Red, I didn't know it did have a full body, and the full body is kind of cool. Weird for such a muscular, there's just such weird components. I really just don't like the bird head. It's loosely based off of, I think, Horus a little bit, but it looks like a chicken head. Like, it just like, it doesn't even look like it's like a majestic phoenix or something. It just looks like a weird chicken head placed on the body. I would have honestly loved to soften that if it had some sort of gold necklace. Like Muhammad or Avdol has such a bold gold statement item with like the necklace earrings combination. Sprinkle a little gold in there. Hierophant Green is so cool looking. I'm loving that like cybernetic webby, like textural green kind of feeling and effect that it has with its overall body. And I think that like the hardware elements that plates it complements that so well, just with some nice sleek solid coloring. It's just such a great silhouette. It looks very futuristic. I like its abilities and kind of what it could do. Loving it. And obviously it coordinates with Kakuin pretty well, and I love that kind of different green situation. You could just see the GIF that I put on my community page. I think that speaks for itself. The world is super stylish. I particularly like the depiction of it within the anime, just like an old gold experience. It's based off of the tarot card The World, so that just really, I think, underscores a little bit more of its significance and grandness as a stand. It also is noted that its like head shape is meant to, again, emulate kind of some of that of like Egyptian high class. Within the manga, there's some weird coloring that I'm not as much of a fan of, but it does show a bit more of the different components, like a little bit of the elements towards the side of the body and how that goes around the waist. A lot of the stands have some great kind of like waist or just like upper body decoration elements. But of course, Star Platinum is super sick. Again, liking more of the anime depiction just because I like the darker, it looks like almost like a purple or periwinkle kind of color. There's some great decorations that are more discernible from an accessory standpoint on the stand, like the scarf, the shoulder pads, and even a bit of the cloth that goes around the waist. I'm liking that it's kind of a bit more dressed up. And it's kind of a nice contrast from Jotaro, because I feel like he looks a little more standard, while this is a little more decorative and a little bit more splash of color, and actually coordinates with him well within maybe some of his latter part outfits. So loving that flexibility there. That brings us into the fourth part of the JoJo series, Diamond is Unbreakable. So I have mixed feelings about Red Hot Chili Pepper. It feels like yet another reference to the American band, absolutely. And I think that just that concept kind of goes well with Akira, who's a bit of like obviously a musician. Outside of that, there's really not the best coordination because this stand is ugly. It looks like a prehistoric DBZ alien electric type Pokemon situation, which is all over the place. but it is pretty powerful, which I feel like kind of gives it a little bit of a plus. And it does have a bit more of a discernible kind of structure and humanoid form outside of a lot of the other stands. So that's really the main reason why I included it. The term I give it is Jurassic Pikachu. Enigma has all the colors that I love. We're starting to get really into some of the stands I really like. I just like the swirly patterns. I feel like it kind of gives in a little bit more to that illusion. Just the swirls, the body shape, I think the pink and the purple go so well against each other. And then the eyes are blue, which is just yet another incorporation of another color. So these are three of my favorite colors. Coordination with the stand user, not so much. Love the stand user's outfit, top fave, but not really seeing as much connection there, but it's okay because the stand looks super cool as is. Cinderella slay. Obviously, I mean, really wish that there was more of a full body experience here, but even just with being upper body, it looks so cute, coordinates with its stand user, obviously, but based on its abilities, it would probably be able to craft its ideal, beautiful, aesthetic user anyway. I just think it looks like a glam bot. Like, I know everyone's against machines taking over the future, but like if there's a future where we had like machine AI attendants, this would be one that we would see just hovering around Sephora, giving beauty tips and maybe even transforming some people's looks. Highway Star, the separating the body parts thing is like really weird and creepy and ugly. But as far as its overall design, I'm super into it. This is a point where I'm going to note that there's a bit of that like argyle or like diamond checker design throughout a lot of stands. And it gets, I think, a little bit repetitive as we go in latter parts. But at least here, one of the first stands, I think, to really have that strong pattern. And the color palette is obviously really great. Loving the dark purple and even with a little sprinkle of black, and just those gold elements really stand out. I guess decent coordination with the stand user. He has some designs on his school uniform that can kind of tie to this, but so Echoes is definitely giving us one of our first Pokemon evolution line. Obviously, I love the final form best, Act 3. The initial forms are ugly and weird, but this final form definitely looks kind of cool. I feel like it resembles the user really well and even has like almost like a similar outfit, just what looks like a bit of a flowy long upper coat. So I kind of definitely like that. I kind of like some of that weird contrast and duality to the stand. It's interesting. And the color palette's cute too. Heaven's Door slay, obviously. Like, to be Rohan stand, you know you gotta look good. Obviously love, I think it's almost like Showtime top hat look with like a bow tie, a long coat. But that hat almost seems like it's almost incomplete or like transparent and like it's kind of being 3D modeled but hasn't been fully rendered. I just feel like that kind of somehow in my brain ties to an artist's like sketches and just the fine lines. And obviously we've talked about the white and the gold, such a sophisticated combination. And I really do like that it has these green, normal looking eyes that pop. And it honestly is one of the most human looking stands, which I feel like is also a really strong differentiating element. I think I'm the biggest fan of the hand, mostly because of the color palette. I really just think that blue against the white is really striking. And of course, some of the gold elements incorporated are a good complement to the blue because we see that yellow and blue can be good complementary colors sometimes, and gold's within that family. I like that it has some of those currency symbols on its chest that kind of ties back to the user, who also has that on his jackets and stuff. Loved his outfit. Not a top fave, but loved it enough. And I just think that the shape of the head of this stand is a little more unique than some of the others. Some of the future stands kind of start to have a little bit of a circular shape like that. But Crazy Diamond is obviously really pretty. Love the color palette. We love a pink and blue situation. And I think the wiki said that it was particularly designed to be in contrast to Star Platinum's darker kind of look. So I think that this is a good evolution for something a little softer that kind of fits, I think, the vibe and mood and grooviness of part 4 anyway. And again, we have some nice notable heart motifs, especially with the top of the head, which is also an interesting touch. Coordination wise, I mean, outside of maybe some heart motifs in Yosuke's look, there was maybe a bit more purple in this. I think there could have been a stronger connection, but it's all good. But you know that Killer Queen takes the cake for part 4. I mean, look at this design. It just looks so fierce. It almost looks like a wrestler belt and gloves, which just adds to a bit more of that fierceness. I think the manga has a really great depiction of the Killer Queen in all white. with some gold and green kind of complements. Either way, just the silhouette and overall form of this stand is crazy. And obviously there's, I think, some good coordination with the user, even though I didn't choose him as a favorite outfit because I feel like his suit was a little kind of basic in concert with the more extravagant JoJo outfits. We definitely, I think, get some of the, at least the color coordination. All right, that brings us into the fifth part of the JoJo series, Golden Wind. So craft work, I wasn't initially too sure. I was a little on the fence, but what stuck out to me was the shape of its head. It's really giving Cenobite from Hellraiser, if you know, you know. The overall body's not giving us anything wildly different than what we've seen, outside of maybe some flesh and musculatureness, which also just kind of gives Cenobite. So that's really the main reason why I chose this, because it looks really similar. As far as relation to Sale, the stand user, I mean, maybe a bit of the shape of his hair compared to the shape of the stand's head. That's about the furthest I could go. Maybe you see some greater coordination than I do. I debated on incorporating Green Day, but maybe it's just, again, another reference to a band name that I was kind of digging. But I think what really did it for me was more so how those red eyes really stand out against that darker green kind of head. It almost looks like a pickled cucumber. No, why that's like the main comparison that just jumped into my head. Pickled cucumber, which is like a pickle. I mean, did I just say that? Was that redundant? Anyway, I just feel like the color palette is kind of nice and does kind of give like fungusy or like mold. So I think that it definitely ties well, and it's an interesting silhouette. Soft Machine, what stood out to me the most were the pointed studs. Its ability is to point anybody with its sword anyway and deflate them anything. So obviously that's giving all of that and some. And I really like how the top of the head just looks like a cluster of like pointy crystals. I don't know, just overall it's giving like this shimmery crystal studded design, and I'm really liking that texture. And it looks like Mario, the stand user, also has some points within like his shoulder pads or maybe other parts of his outfit. So that's some basic coordination we're getting there. Black Sabbath is so mysterious and crazy. Its ability is also pretty cool, and I feel like its clothing really reflects that. And the fact that it even has such notable garments is, I think, a real standout against a lot of the other stands as well. It also has these kind of pointy golden studs on its hat that you kind of see at the top of its user's head. Just kind of gives boss man and chief vibes, which makes a lot of sense. And a lot of these stands are based off of some sort of like Venetian influence, including this character. So I just really wanted to call that out as well. Man in the Mirror, the outfit is so fresh. I think I like the manga depiction better because we get a bit more of like a purple and like a copper yellow, orangish yellow contrast, which I think coordinates with Aluso's design a bit better. And what I also like about this character is like some of those studs that kind of pins some of the fabric in place. I feel like is a nice rigid contrast to the more of the softer clothing texture that I feel like Aluso has. I specifically called that out when I favorited his outfit. But the anime depiction is really nice too, with just some black and gold, which we all know is a classic luxurious combination. So King Crimson, again, we're getting into that like diagonal argyle checkered design, which is a lot for this character. And also it has like another face on like its forehead, which is so ugly. I think that's what took me completely out from like liking this even more than I could. But I feel like it does tie really well back to Diavolo's look, because he has a bit like of a netted fishnet mesh top. So I kind of feel like we're getting a little bit of that with a color contrast. So definitely some good coordination. Overall, kind of really want to dig the design, but there's some elements that are really weird. But it is kind of stronger than a lot of the other stands. Purple Haze, loving it. Again, we're getting into that like checker design. That's why I wore this, because I'm just like, it's all over the place. It's a little much and it just kind of keeps happening. But I love the purple and white design. And I love that there's like almost like a cloth-like material around its waist, similar to a lot of the other stands. So it's very fashion. And I've talked about before how when there's some like hardware, like armor elements, it can kind of look a little more costume. Particularly in a stand perspective, that's a little void. And if anything, it looks really fashion and stylish here. just again with that black, white, and purple color palette similar to cream. It looks kind of dark and mysterious, but also just really sophisticated. Moody Blues, I kind of wish this one had different powers and we could have maybe seen a bit more of it in like true action, because I love this one. It just has such a sleek, smooth design. Similar to cream, again, I'm going to reference it. It has a head, shoulder, frame, and silhouette similar to what I feel like Leone has. So I immediately noticed that as far as some coordination. And Leone has some kind of purple elements within his look anyway, which I feel like we definitely get a touch here. And overall, it just looks like it's wearing a pair of like really tall thigh-high boots, which is like so sick and fashion. I just love the silhouette and the sleekness of the design. Simple, it doesn't always need to be over the top. So Sticky Fingers, I was wondering why there was something that didn't let me fully like engage and maybe like this stand as much as I wanted to. I think it's just that it has a very similar color palette to the hand. I love the contrast of the blue and the white, like I mentioned, with some gold accents just to further complement. But I just feel like that's a really similar color palette, especially with parts back to back that we've already kind of just seen. But I love the gold zipper elements. I kind of wish maybe there were a bit more, I would even say dramatic gold zippers throughout, like even further, just to, I think, just differentiate it more from the hand. Gold experience, obviously, just a slay. I mean, gold within itself and like a whole gold body. Are you kidding me? I love the shape of the head. I think that that's kind of really what does it for me the most, almost. And obviously we have those scarab beetle motifs that tie right back to Giorno. So, I mean, we're there. I will say that I feel like the beetle motifs are a bit much. I feel like they're just kind of all over the place. Like, we get it. There's also some kind of like winged elements to obviously touch on like the golden wind component of it, and just kind of like the easy breezy flowiness, I think, of this stand. Its evolved form creeps me out though. Like, it looks just as overpowered as it is. It really got creepy just with those eyes. Those eyes are so weird. Like, it's so strange just kind of seeing those when we haven't really gotten eyes like that across a number of the different stands. But I do like the intricacy of the design. It looks almost like very human and like almost like a little fleshy. But I think that there's enough of like some color differentiation, and just the head shape is really cool too, just to make it feel almost Super Saiyan-ish. I don't know where that came from. And it's also interesting how the big heart motif in the chest is inverted. But I'm sorry, I have to give the top spot to Spice Girl. Like, I have no idea why they slept on Trish and her ability with this stand. This stand has so much attitude, so much personality that we weren't getting from Trish because she was too busy playing damsel in distress. And the abilities were kind of cool. Like, she got out of a situation. The coordination between them is excellent. She's literally wearing a stylish dress. I just felt like there was so much more potential, and yet another female character that didn't have their potential fully leveraged within a combat or just overall storytelling plot situation. Loving the pink, obviously, that's one of my favorite colors. Just overall obsessed with this stand and its coordination with Trish. That now brings us into the sixth part of the JoJo series, Stone Ocean. Green, green grass of home. Just some of the names of these are crazy. But it's a song, so I guess that explains it. This design is interesting. The wiki noted that it's tribal, and I think that it is the headpiece. It almost looks like a tribal mask and headpiece. That's exactly the vibe I was getting. I'm glad I kind of caught that note. I feel like that lighter silver element really helps the darker blue and the orange stand out, and blue and orange can be complementary anyway. So just the darker bluish purple with those orange kind of like stitched elements, really nice design and contrast without feeling too busy and over the top. Marilyn Manson giving us some nice textural elements, softer, that we don't always usually get from these stands. Also has a snatched red waist, which is like just very dimensional. I like the stands that are at least a little maybe more dimensional in that regard. Just kind of feels a bit more grand and structured. And I think the red is really nicely placed within like the visor, the waist, and a little bit of the side of the arms. While I think more so like the bold goldish brown maybe even like mustard elements that are like a little, really more so around the shoulders, because I feel like that's what kind of ties to the shoulderless style and outfit that we're getting from the user. Planet Waves is crazy. First, I mean, the fact that it could launch, okay, I don't even know how I want to approach this. Jolene had meteor-sized chunks of flesh removed from her body. I need us to just really let that sink in. This stand did that to her, and yet she still goated all the way through that part. Such a crazy ability, such a like crazy cataclysmic looking stand that can just cause such crazy damage. I mean, its user only just happened to adopt its power, so really not a strong connection there. I think it stands on its own pretty well. Tell me why Jumping Jack Flash literally looks more fashion than Lang Wrangler. Like, Lang Wrangler's outfit is kind of really ugly, and I had to reimagine it just because I was like, this stand actually has, I feel like, a coherent suit that looks like a genuine outfit. I'm loving the accessory items that are part of it, but it looks like accessories, like those wrist bangles that are really, I think, it's like the real catalyst for its abilities. I'm loving the kind of purplish bands around its head and around its neck. That is just a nice complement and pop against some of the more orange elements in the suit. It even has like a belt element just to make it seem like it's a full, coherent, coordinated suit. So into it. So Weather Report, I think it's funny how like the user is Weather Report and the stand is Weather Report. It's overall just a really clean aesthetic. It's kind of giving clouds, and we also do still have, again, similar to Gold Experience, some of those like wing-like elements on it, which I feel like is just kind of giving flowy, definitely weather-oriented. And it also has wings around its ankles and feet, which are reflective of the Greek god Hermes. So I'm really just liking more of the conceptual, clean play here. Doesn't need to be crazy. I think the eyes also stand out really well against just the overall clean palette. Underworld is so fashion, and what differentiates it from Weather Report, in my opinion, is just it has so much more amazing accessorizing going on. It also has like these star elements on the nipples, like stop, and then it has like a feathery kind of like skirt waist like belt situation just for some silhouette and texture. Loving that. And then I think I just really like the things on its head. It just looks kind of cool, almost like the kind of bands that are on Donatello's outfit. So I feel like color-wise and some of the decorative element-wise, we're definitely getting some cool coordination. Foo Fighters is such an interesting one. The wiki compares this overall stand and how it looks alien and extraterrestrial to Hierophant Green. I can kind of see it. It's like weird robotic, cybernetic, alien, futuristic vibe. But obviously love the black and gold color palette. I mean, especially for something that's so regular of a stand based on just like a little plankton. I think that's such an interesting way to elevate a stand like this that could have otherwise just been really trivial. I almost kind of wish it could have maintained some of this form, but I know that for plot reasons, it definitely needed to evolve into the more humanoid form that it did. So Diver Down, I think that there's a bit of a clash with a little bit of the color palette, but I like the color palette because it just feels a little more bright and vibrant and just kind of a little more alive than a lot of the other darker toned stands that we've been getting up until this point. It definitely genuinely kind of looks like it's wearing like diver gear, so I'm loving that. And then I loved Narciso's outfit anyway, and so I feel like with those big magenta or pink D's across the stand design, that definitely coordinates well with like the pink footsteps or like motifs or appliques that were on Narciso's outfit. Kiss has such a strong design. I almost feel like it's kind of giving the Cell, Jennifer Lopez. I don't know where this came from. I hope someone else knows what I mean by that. But anyway, I feel like there's some good coordination with Hermes just based on a bit of like a sleeveless moment. We can kind of tell from the outfit that it's sleeveless. But overall, I'm loving the Kiss motifs, obviously kind of tying to the abilities. And I just really like the textural and gold and how that just really looks so luxurious and rich and fine against some of that kind of maroon or wine and pink coloring. It just definitely looks royal. Stone Free, I'm glad that we were able to get like a humanoid form out of Jolene's stand. Obviously, we're getting some coordination just with that kind of more bluish glowy toned outfit that Jolene is wearing. The fact that this stand can repair, again, meteor-sized chunks of flesh taken out of Jolene's body is impeccable. The killer sunglasses, it's giving like 2000s a little bit. Is it not giving like 2000s a little bit? I really just love the overall just like glowiness and color. I just love the stand, period. But let's talk about Poochie's Pokemon Evolution stand line. White Snake was fierce right out the get-go. Again, giving that kind of crown, cell, Pan's Labyrinth type weird quirky design. I'm loving the black and gold. Obviously we know, and then against the white, it's just so kind of interesting and just contrasts even further. And I just feel like we're getting discernible clothing pieces, like an interesting kind of skirt piece with a little bit of like a neck choker harness upper body thing. And then the shoes are cool too. Like they're almost discernible shoes that like are of a unique design. I've never seen a shoe in before, to be honest. I'm just loving this. The evolution into Sea Moon is very weird. If it were an all green stand, I think it would be absolutely hideous. Just when it was like a weird green baby to begin with, I was like, what is going on here? But that belt waist skirt situation is so fashion. Like it looks so good, and it's a genuine belt. Like you can see it even like buckled and fastened, and I like how there's more of like a lime green kind of cloth element under the belt, just for some extra diversity in the palette and just to underscore the color of the green, which brings you right back up to the top. And the eyes are a nice red, which contrasts against the green pretty well, but it's really creepy and ugly. But Made in Heaven is crazy, and I feel like this absolutely coordinates with the holy divine role that Poochie's kind of put himself in, or he's supposed to play. It's almost like it's not Centaur. It's like a genuine body riding a horse, but like we don't even get human legs. We only just get the horse hooves, and there's not more horse body. It just kind of connects, and you can kind of see from the back of the stand. It's really weird, but it's so creative and almost like it's kind of giving a little bit of Pegasus. I don't know. It's all over the place in a really divine, angelic way. And I feel like it definitely accomplishes what something like this is, like almost like a Horseman Revelations vibe. Like, ooh, that brings us into the 7th part of the JoJo series, Steel Ball Run. Civil War is definitely more of a mechanical. It's the stand, it's humanoid, which is why I selected it. But I love that it's almost like a robot or some sort of like weird sentient creation. It almost looks like it's wearing like a padded vest and some really statement fringe red boots. And just really the head is just the most interesting part. Like, and just that hardware component to it. I guess it kind of relates to Axel's style. So I guess there's some coordination, not so on the nose, but he does have some like hardware elements to his look. So I can kind of give it a little bit of that connection, but overall just a really unique and creative design. Tusk Act 4, don't even ask me what the ability does. I was very confused by what the abilities that this stand has in general. I guess I'll have to like wait till that part comes out so I can watch it. But it's the most unique silhouette that we've gotten, I think, out of a stand quite yet. It's much more boxy and bulky, but with some interesting textural elements, just with that kind of like, I don't even know, like scales or just materials and design stemming up from its shoulders. It almost just looks like a big kind of like hockey player to an extent. But I like that the shoes or the feet are almost like discernible dress shoes. Dirty, dirty deeds done dirt cheap, D4C. I think this one's really cool. It obviously looks like a rabbit, and the ears are kind of, I think, based off of like an actual rabbit-like creature in real life or animal in real life. Loving the pink and the blue, much more so than what we kind of got in the manga, which I think is a bit more of a white design. Oh, I'm sorry, it's like more of a mint green design with like black and gray. Not so much into that. We definitely need the more cotton candy Silent Hill. I call it Cotton Candy Silent Hill. It's just giving those vibes as well, just with the pink and the blue. But I mean, there's really not much else to say. I think it goes with Funny Valentine pretty well. All right, that brings us into the last part of the JoJo series that I'm going to cover, at least, the 8th part, Jojolion. So Dubiwa, I wasn't sure. I wanted definitely more so humanoid forms with legs. but there's just something about how it looks like this stand is like intertwined with like different bands that crisscross and are perpendicular to one another. And I think that's just an interesting contrast to like a clean spiral, windy presence or aura or ability that it has in general. And I feel like that kind of perpendicular, tied up and bound look and design elements ties really well to Aisho's, which I love that about his outfit is that he has like these shirts wrapped around his head that kind of just gives a little bit of a messy kind of aesthetic. And I feel like we're kind of getting that emulated really well with this stand. Malagraman's also very interesting. It just has design elements that I don't think we've seen on really any stands up until this point as well. Jojolion really came out the box with some designs. The holes in the face and the hands is kind of weird, but I feel like just further adds to the look and contrasts nicely with those spikier triangular shapes across the body. And I think just like with those varying elements, it does kind of give some interesting dimension to it. It doesn't have a user, or its user has been forgotten, or like it's just functioning without one. So no coordination to touch on, but I would have been curious to know what the original stand user looked like. I Am a Rock is, it almost looks like one of those torture devices, you know, like where you put the person and their spikes on the inside of the thing and you close it. That's immediately what I thought of when I saw this, just with like its circular upper body and head shape. Obviously, the spikes tie really well to Yatsuyo's, who I loved his outfit as well because he had those spiky elements throughout. So we're obviously getting some coordination there, as well as just some of like the shoulder and like upper body elements. The red color is just so menacing, I think, and really just adds to the lethality or how dangerous this stand probably is. Love Love Deluxe just looks like a fashion diva, even though that's like hair. It's like a fur outfit, which is just so stylish and honestly quite chic. And it's kind of big fro, I think coordinates well with the user because her hair, I think, is like in a nice flowy style, but kind of like afro-ish or like at least kind of bunched and curly. Stand kind of has those same elements, really works nicely and looks good. And just the way that the hair covers the body just looks like a genuine outfit. So I just love that overall. Born This Way almost just looks like Ghost Rider, but like even cooler. Loving the purple and black and silver going on. There's just such great texture and hardware throughout the outfit. It's big in armor and bulky, but I feel like it's positioned all in a way that still is rather quite fashion because it doesn't look like traditionally placed armor, like or stereotypical. It just has other elements involved just to give it different shape to the overall design. I will say I think it would have been nice to maybe just see a bit more purple and more of the body. Walking Heart, I at least for this review didn't find an image of it where it's like standalone, but I think we get enough of a look. And I think it just has really great coordination with the user, just with her hair looking kind of strand-like anyway, and just with a little bit of those pieces peeking through in like the front of her hairstyle. And this stand has really similar elements. It's overall looking really strand-like, but also has some strands in the front by the sides of its head. And I just love heart motif in the chest and just the gold element around the waist. Just looks nicely decorated and elevated. King Nothing almost looks like it's a suit. Like it looks like it's a character. It almost looks like a character. A really interesting, really humanoid silhouette. And the puzzle pieces are so weird. I don't know if I completely like the color palette. I would have liked if maybe we played with maybe more colors within this kind of jigsaw puzzle piece situation. But I think overall, just like the puzzle piece design and texture to it, because it can kind of disassemble itself into those various pieces, is so cool. I think the head shape is really interesting and worth noting, like just with the downward pointing horns. It almost looks like a helmet, which is also just a nice touch. Nut King Cole, which I think is a play on words for Nat King Cole. Loving the design. It almost just looks like one of those Japanese superhero, like robot futuristic kind of boy character, like just with the big V. I feel like I've seen that. And that's also, I think, on another stand for Magent. That was more so like a suit, which is why I didn't include it. But I just like the colors. Obviously, purple, hugely biased there. And I think those nuts and bolt motif elements, decorations add excellent texture and are just such strong statement accessories. Like that choker or necklace could be a real life necklace. Like it's begging for somebody to recreate it. Soft and Wet also has, I think, a nice silhouette. just with its upper body just being pretty much just a big heart. Again, just really paying off the heart motifs across a number of the stands. And I think just being in the 8th part, that's a good culmination of that design element. Obviously, just with some anchors to tie back with some coordination with the user. So that's really great. Love just like the bubbly elements. And I think like its color palette even gives like water and bubble and just obviously its name. I think the head shape is a little weird. That's not my favorite part. And there's also some like hoop elements or like gold ring elements around like the joints. Just again, another little element to kind of make it feel a little more nautical. Space trucking is giving us another innovative silhouette for a stand. Araki really, I think, pushed some boundaries for stands in this 8th part. I just overall love the color. I just love the shape, and I love the mismatch kind of card designs. I even noted within Kato's how I love her kind of like patchwork mismatch, kind of a little varied designs and patterns and colors. And this stand is perfectly coordinating with her in that regard, and obviously speaks to the ability with like the cards really well. Overall, really is doing the job. But I have to say that I just love Paisley Park's design. It's so simple and it looks literally just like the user. And I don't know if that's maybe, it almost feels like a physical manifestation of the user's intuition because it's meant to guide her in the right direction or down the right path. And we see like that intersection design on the body. It just also looks like it's glowing, like a glowing kind of like pinkish hue, but it's also kind of like dark. So we're getting some, I feel like iridescence or holographic touch to the design, which just makes it feel more alive and just more cybernetic, which it also has a little bit of those abilities. Similar hairstyle, just feminine silhouette, coordinates perfectly with the user. I've said that again, love it. Y'all, I just bossed my way through 54 stand designs, and I don't think I cut anything too short, but I feel like I spent enough time on each of those. I would love to know what you think about all these different designs. There's so many to choose from. Feel free to even call out some that I didn't include that I think are ugly or weird, but I would love to know what your thoughts are, as always, in the comments. I think that there's room to do more JoJo videos. I don't really know what those are yet, but you know, we'll circle back in some regard. But until the next video, I'll talk to you later.